One of the oldest operating parks in the United States is Kennywood in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, just outside of Pittsburgh. This park is famous for its 3 wooden coasters built in the 1920s with a world-class hyper, plus the new for 2019 SNS Hyper that broke the US record for the most inversions on a coaster, Steel Curtain. Unfortunately, this trip took place back when Steel Curtain was just a pile of dirt. After hearing about this park for 20 years, I was finally able to get out there last year, so today I'll look back on my day at Kennywood on Sunday, July 15th, 2018. The night before getting to Kennywood, we had to rewatch the 2009 film Adventureland, which was filmed at the park, just so we could see if there was anything that we could recognize once we were in the park. And yeah, there were a few nuggets in there. Once we arrived at the park, we found that there was preferred paid parking and free general parking. We got there before opening, so we got a pretty good parking spot in the free lot, and we walked down to wait for the gates to open. My coaster count coming into the day was 298, so I wanted to ride Exterminator first so I could make Phantom's Revenge my number 300. Once the park opened, none of the rides were open. We passed by Phantom to get to Exterminator, but then ended up standing by Thunderbolt waiting for it to open. This was a little bit of a frustrating way to start the day. Thunderbolt finally opened after about 15 minutes. Now, I was a little gun-shy about old wooden coasters after riding Blue Streak at Conneaut Lake Park the day before, but Thunderbolt was remarkably smooth, and it uses the terrain just about as well as any coaster I've ever ridden. At this point, Phantom was open, so we went over there and it was a station wait, though they were just running one train. We grabbed the back row for my 300th credit, and this coaster really impressed me. It's kind of short, but it combines some spectacular speed at the bottom of the second drop with some crazy airtime at the end. We came back around 20 minutes later and got another ride. Next up was Exterminator, which had a pretty extensively themed and dark queue line, which we waited in for maybe 10 minutes. And it was a pretty solid Wild Mouse, but overall pretty forgettable. One ride was enough for me. We went on to the other side of the park to hit the other 2 classic Woodies, starting with the park's oldest coaster, Jackrabbit. It's hard to believe that this coaster will be celebrating its 100th birthday next year. This is another great terrain Woody that, like Thunderbolt, starts with a drop before hitting the lift hill. This ride is famous for its double down, which I found to have very good airtime. One downside of this is that the way it loads, you don't necessarily get to pick your seat. They let enough people through to fill the train, so if you're one of the last ones through, you'll have to take whatever's left. I did get to sit near the back to get maximum airtime on the double down. We went next door to ride the Racer, which was about a 15-minute wait, and I found this to be the weakest Woody in the park. The racing aspects saved this coaster because the ride itself is pretty boring. I went and got some pictures of the new coaster's construction site, which was right next to Racer, and this was a few days before we knew that it was going to be called Steel Curtain. At this point, the park was still releasing those scratcher clues on its social media accounts. We went back for one more ride on Jackrabbit, which had a decent line, but luckily this was running 2 trains. We also decided to get one more ride on Thunderbolt, which I thought was a lot rougher than my first ride, but I still think this was the best wooden coaster in the park. We walked around to see the rest of the park, and I got a few shots of Skyrocket, which had been closed for the entire summer because they were waiting for a replacement part, which was disappointing, but it wasn't unexpected. We decided to end the day with Phantom's Revenge, which had a line that was coming out of the station, but this went surprisingly quick thanks to it being a short ride. We waited around 20 minutes for the first ride, but then had to wait around 40 minutes for the last ride, and at that point we called it a day for coasters. We hunted around for a basic Kennywood shirt, which was hard to find. It took some doing, but we finally got one. We also noticed the bumper cars and the Music Express, which were featured in Adventureland. We wanted to leave around 4 p.m. so we could get to Hershey Park the next day, and as we were leaving, a thunderstorm rolled in, so it was good that we left when we did. We did as much as we could with the time that we had. They had some cool flat rides like the Pendulum, Black Widow, the Scream and Swing, Swing Shot, and the visually stunning Aero 360. They also have the classic walkthrough attraction, Noah's Ark, which I would like to do when I get back there when I have more time. That cross-country trip was a major time crunch, and we were focused on riding coasters and getting pictures, and we rarely had time for anything else. So here are some thoughts on this park. The rides here are definitely unique. You're not walking into a park like Six Flags St. Louis where every other ride is a clone. The operations on the old rides was very interesting, and you don't see stations like that too often. Just based on my visit, from a coaster standpoint, I felt this park needed a little bit more to be a true full-day park, but with Skyrocket reopening, and now with Steel Curtain, I think they have that covered. All of these coasters are maintained incredibly well, which is a major plus. Overall, it was a very good experience that could have been better, and I'll give it another shot, hopefully in 2020, to re-ride all of the coasters and get the credits on Skyrocket and Steel Curtain. Here's the final ride count. 4 on Phantom's Revenge, 2 on Thunderbolt, 2 on Jackrabbit, 1 on Exterminator, 1 on Racer, and 0 on Skyrocket. We also skipped the kiddie coaster. I don't even think I saw it when I was there. The biggest disappointment was the 1 train ops on Phantom's Revenge and Thunderbolt. It was a weekend in the middle of the summer, and they only had 1 train going on their 2 best rides, which I don't understand, but it didn't end up causing much of a problem. The biggest surprise was how smooth these coasters were. They have some ancient woodies and a pretty old aero design hyper, and they were all very smooth, other than some roughness that I felt on my second ride on Thunderbolt. Given the roughness of the other old woodies I had ridden up to that point, the smoothness was much welcomed and surprising. So let me know what you think about Kennywood in the comments below, and if Steel Curtain makes this a top tier park, and how else this park can improve. Be sure to drop a like, subscribe to my channel if you're new here, and I will see you guys all next time.